All right. John, why do you think it's important that things like this should be open?
Well, you have an actual speech. In first place, it is almost open. Anybody could have registered for $45. I could have done it sneakily. Come in there with a notebook, and in fact, probably even one of those little cameras on the sly, and written about it. It's a quasi-public event in a public accommodation, and the Secretary of Natural Resources is making a speech. It's not as though a few people are having a meeting with him in his office. People are entitled to meet privately with government officials, and they're entitled to meet privately with interest groups. But when you have a sort of a public event, a virtually public event, and the lunch speaker that's on their schedule is the Secretary of Natural Resources, and other high-ranking officials are talking about some issues that are quite controversial when it comes to these are the regulators talking with the regulated about regulations that they're trying to change. The public should know what they say.
Okay, and so is it? Would it be something they could have? I mean, it is open in a sense. So I mean,
in a sense, it's open.
So where does the issue really stand then? I mean, there's nothing.
It is it's private property. The hotel, even though it's a public accommodation, they're a private organization. They're perfectly within their legal rights. They say you're not welcome. I didn't pay. I didn't register. I called up and said I'm a reporter. I want to cover it. They said no, and then they've said no to other reporters who've asked the same thing. And they're willing to take the public relations hit, both they and the Associated Industries of Vermont and the state officials. Editorial in today's Free Press, some other negative publicity. So the question I would then ask is, why are they willing to take that public relations hit and keep the meeting closed? And the answer, an answer, I think, is that they're saying things they don't want the public to hear. If they were confident that the general public would approve of what's going on there, they would invite us in. They'd buy us lunch. They'd pour us wine. They'd probably give us all a T-shirt,
Right.
But I think, look, it's perfectly legal, proper meeting of a group of people who are pressuring the administration to weaken environmental regulations. They may have a good case, but it's a hard sell anywhere in America, and especially in Vermont, and they probably want as little publicity about it as possible, which is their right. It's our right, it's our duty as reporters to knock on the door and say we'd like to come in, and to make a bit of a stink when they don't let us in. Not so much at the AIV, but at the Secretary and at the Governor, and I don't think he's any different from any other recent governor.
Right.
Ideally, the major state officials would not make speeches to gatherings like this if the press were excluded. And it's not that it's great fun sitting in a hotel room taking notes while people talk about regulatory policy.
Right.
This is not
It's
a boondoggle.
It's not sexy.
Right. I've done boondoggles. I'm good at boondoggles.
Right.
I used to always find good political stories in Florida during spring training. I know how to do this. This is not. This is just work. This is the obligation to the public that reporters have. They often get a little carried away with it and assert it when it doesn't exist. The public doesn't really have to know about every celebrity wedding and funeral, but the public ought to know what their leaders they're paying. When they meet with special interest groups in a quasi-public setting, the public ought to know what's being said back and forth.
Excellent. Anything else you want to add?
I think that's all I have to say.
All right, great. Thanks, John.